They used to just be out there, mugging a few people on their own in private enterprise. Nowadays they march in ranks. Well, they go out and threaten the people with violence and mayhem. Because they've been educated. Now they know how to be filthier. You can't get that naturally. Even a cat cleans itself. We'll get more to that subject later. Let's go back to the thing capital. All economic goods fall into two categories. They're either consumption goods or capital goods. A consumption good is any good that directly satisfies a human want and has a price on it. A capital good is any good that does not directly satisfy a human want, but will produce one that will satisfy a human want. For notice, if the good won't satisfy a human want and won't produce one that will satisfy a human want, human beings won't put a price on it. It includes all goods, you see. Now, let's take a look at what capital really is. I have an aborigine, see, and he's out chasing bunny rabbits with his bare hands, through the bush. And he catches a bunny rabbit, and he eats a bunny rabbit, and he throws the bones over his shoulders. Now, that bunny rabbit is a capital good. A consumption good. Excuse me, my definition. That's a consumption good. He consumed it. That's how we know it. It's a consumption good. Now he sits there and he says to himself, I don't get very many bunny rabbits chasing through the woods with my bare hands, see? I'm going to make me a blowgun. And I'm going to get me more bunny rabbits. After about 6 weeks of debate, design, engineering, he finally sits down and he starts making himself a blowgun. And he gets his blowgun done. Now, notice something about the blowgun. One, it doesn't satisfy any human want. He doesn't want to wear the blowgun. He can't eat the blowgun. He doesn't want to sleep in the blowgun. He doesn't live in the blowgun. The blowgun itself has no value. What did it cost him to get the blowgun? The bunny rabbits he didn't get while he was making a blowgun. His investment was the lack of bunny rabbits. Now, that's very sound economics. What you do? Well, that's his investment. What is the value of the blowgun? Has nothing to do with what he paid for it, is it? The value of the blowgun is how many bunny rabbits it's going to get. Notice that the blowgun won't get any more bunny rabbits than he got with his bare hands. He throws the blowgun over his shoulder and forgets the whole thing and goes back to chasing bunny rabbits or thinking of a new way of getting bunny rabbits. The blowgun's value is in its future production of bunny rabbits in excess of the bunny rabbits he would have got if he didn't have a blowgun. And notice that future production is not greater than the bunny rabbits he would have got without the blowgun. The blowgun has no value, regardless of how beautiful the blowgun and no matter how much he worked to make it. The value of the blowgun is not in the blowgun, it's in what it will produce. A capital goods value is not in itself, it's in its productive capacity. There's 6 years of economics right there in a package. Now we can go to the graduate level. Well, that's where you have these definitions. Now, every society in the world, from the most primitive society, is capitalistic. And every society wants to become more so. No communist has ever tried to do away with capital. In fact, they're trying to get more of it, aren't they? They're not against capital. They're against who owns the capital. Let me give you an illustration here. You buy a car. You pay the payments, the taxes, the insurance. You pay all the gas and oil. You pay all the repairs. You pay for everything in that car, but you never get to drive it. You don't even get to see it. I drive it every day. Who's better off, me or you? Well, you are. You're rich. You own a car. I'm poor. I don't own a car. Isn't that right? My point is, it isn't important who owns, it's who controls. Notice, our super rich give away their money, title only, but not control. They have total control as if it's in their total personal bank account, but they gave away title, so they don't pay any taxes. Last year, people in the United States earning $20 million or more paid less than 7% income taxes. People in the United States earning $600,000 more, this is by the Internal Revenue Code figure, who earn $600,000 or more paid less, or half of them, didn't pay any taxes at all. where 85% of the entire income tax taken in the United States last year came from the lowest bracket taxpayer. I like those apples. Huh? Somebody's been taken again, haven't they? Yeah, you're supposed to think you're taking away from the rich, aren't you? Oh, no. That's what they tell you. Who owns the newspapers telling you this? Now, we'll forget that one. Yeah, let's not pursue that anymore. My point, getting back to capital. The communists are not against capitalism. They're against individual ownership of capitalism. Let's get that clear. They're not for doing away with capital. They're doing away with your right to own it. They're after the destruction of private property. Notice, what is the basic right? I see students with the sign that says, human rights above property rights. Tears. I want to tell you something. The basic, the fundamental human right is the right to private property. Without the right to private property, you're a slave. Every slave does not have the right to private property. The master has his property. The master owns it. Somebody owns it. The slave doesn't. A man can either possess what he has created, that means he's free, or he can't possess it. He's a slave. The difference between a slave and a free man is private property. The masses don't like private property. They don't want the slaves to have private property. A free man must have private property to be free. If you cannot acquire, hold, enjoy, and dispose of your earnings as you see fit, you are the slave of whoever can. Make no mistake about it. The communists are attacking private property, for they are attacking the liberty of the individual to run and govern his own life and actions. If you are talking about being free and talking about having private property abridged, you're mixed up. You can't have it any more than you can have dry water or civil rights. They're impossibilities. But you're not supposed to think that far. Remember, it's going to be given to you by Bluntly and Pinkley, and they're going to tell you how to interpret all these sort of things because you're too dumb to figure those things out. Okay, all economic systems are capitalistic. The question isn't whether there is or is not capital. The question is who owns the capital. That's the key. Who owns and controls the capital? Let's take a look at competitive capitalism. I usually have something up here. Hold up. I have to hold this up. I produce this product, see? Well, let me give you another example. I have a Nigerian Negro female, aged 5, is over here visiting her aunt. And her aunt says, Martha, you go down and pick a quart of berries down to the berry patch, and I'll give you a quarter. Martha grabs a little bucket. She goes down, she picks the berries, her aunt gives her a quarter, and Martha's going down to the voting booth. She goes down to the voting booth, corner candy store, and she decides she's going to vote. Now notice the election man in there doesn't say, Martha, you're not an American citizen. Martha, you're of a minority race. Martha, you're not of age. Martha, you're a female. You can't vote. Oh no. He says, how many votes you got, Martha? Martha says, I got 25 votes. He says, go ahead and vote. Nobody asks anything about Martha. He says, how many votes she got? I got 25 votes. Notice she can vote anytime she works. She can vote. She can vote how much she works. Not one man, one vote. How much you work, how much you produce gives you that much right to vote. So she walks down, she says, I'm going to vote 5 votes for that company to succeed. I want that company to go out of business. I hate that company. I want 4 votes for that company. She spends an hour voting, like most women. If you ever waited in a line. That insulted at least half the audience. Okay, I have to get everybody in here. So she's doing the voting. Now notice, the candy company voted for had to win the election against all other candy companies, didn't it? And all ice cream and soda pop and popcorn. Also against saving or movie houses or anything else Martha might have wanted to use the quarter for. Also, even against the beach. Martha could have said to Annie, I don't want to pick berries. I'm going to go swimming. That candy company had to beat out everybody in the world in that election. Notice something else about this election. It's every day. You don't have to wait every 4 years. Second, everybody gets what they vote for. Right or wrong, you get what you vote for. Also, the election's always honest. A guy can't stuff the ballot box. You can't go out and buy your own product back to order to boost the votes. You can't beat the election. It is totally honest. It's every day. Everybody votes according to their work. Some people don't like that kind of election. Those people who don't like the work. They think it's unfair. They want to vote anyway. And they want what they call their share without producing. Everything in this world is consumed, is produced. You can't consume what isn't produced. Either you produce it or you must take it away from the man who did. Any person who says, I want my share and I demand my share, and he isn't earning his share, is a thief. And there's no other way around it. Now, this election is what we call competitive capitalism. Look, I produce this item, and I get a 10% markup on it. Why? If I only get 9%, I'm going to the beach. I'm not going to waste my time worrying about producing and running my company, all the grief and trouble if I only get 9%. 10% is what it takes me to stay in this business. I won't stay for less. But you see this guy here? He's not a very nice guy, you see. I know this. If I charge only 10% more, it doesn't cost you much, just 10% more, I make 100% more profit, don't I? Now, isn't that the way we all get rich? That's what Keynes tells us. You know, after all, it only costs you 10% more, I get 100% more. That means a 90% increase in production, doesn't it? You got to get this sort of thinking, you know. Unless you really get this stuff, you're never going to get a doctor's degree in economics. You won't make it. I can just tell you, people are not going to make it. But you see, why don't I raise my prices 10%? Because this guy's a dishonest, dirty, rotten man. You know what that guy would do? He's so grubby and dirty, he'd produce my product and sell it for 19% profit. Because the business he's in, he says, look, I only get 10%, Crane's getting 20, I'm going to go produce his, and I'll undersell him. So I get even with the guy. I go 18, he goes 17, 16, 15, 14, we're both back down to 10. We got to end up there. Now notice, he gets smart. He figures out a better way to produce a product. He saves 2% of our society's resources. And so he undercuts me by 2%. I can't meet him, can I? I'm forced out of business and release those resources to him because he's more efficient. Only the most efficient can survive. It's a ruthless, dog-eat-dog, dirty, rough way to run business. Except one thing it does. It produces the most product and creates the most progress and the most prosperity possible. And the person who gets all the breaks is the consumer. The producer gets no breaks. You can see why some producers don't like the system. The system is not free enterprise, it's enslaved enterprise. That guy down the street who knocks your prices and undercuts you every time you try to raise them doesn't leave you very free, does it? Competition is a very ruthless way of running a system. All it does is produce the greatest prosperity and liberty possible. But it doesn't create big profits. Now, let us say I decide I'd like to make a 20% profit. How can I do it? Well, I could shoot this guy. But the trouble is this guy is as dirty as he is. And he starts producing, so I shoot him, and I shoot him, and I have to shoot him, and I have to shoot everybody in this room, because all of you people are just as dirty as this guy. Now the problem is, if I try to use this method of keeping others from out of my market, because I cannot get my price up unless I can keep others from selling in my market. The only way I can get an unfair price is by restricting other people from selling in my market. If I can't do this, I cannot be a monopolist. A monopolist must be able to restrict entry into his market. Now, shooting all possible competitors is not very good because I have to shoot everyone and I have no customers. It doesn't work. So I have to use another method. There is only one other method of creating a monopoly. I get the government to pass a law against unfair competition. I get the government to pass a law for a franchise for me, or a license that says only I can sell in this market and nobody else can. Or I get a subsidy to reduce my costs below yours and tax you to pay me and raise your cost over mine. Or I get a parity. Or I get myself a patent that says you can't produce it even. Or I get a tariff, particularly if you're outside of this area, making you pay a special tax to sell to give you a cost disadvantage in my market. So you cannot sell in the market. Or I have to somehow, in one way or the other, to get a government to restrict the market. Only government can restrict markets. Only government can create monopoly. No businessman can. Governments never do away with monopoly. They're the instrument of the creation. No monopoly can exist without some action on the part of government to create it. I'll give you a little example. In the city of Detroit, every boiler has to have a special little round ball called a McDonald boiler fill. It's a little cast iron ball with a little float in it and a little electric switch that if the water drops, it shuts, a 10-cent switch over there, and it's a little ball. Now, everyone has to have it by law, and only one brand is approved by the city government. The little ball costs $247. You have another little one. Guy's got I got a lot, and you got a lot near the ballpark. Now, I get $1 a car in my lot. You can't get any. You see, it would only be 25 cents if we both were having cars in the lot, and then that would be unfair competition, wouldn't it? Because a customer would get a break. We can't have that. I got a little tin plate up there that says, I can park cars, and you don't have a tin plate. You can't. And there's a guy in a blue uniform that comes around and enforces the protection racket, doesn't it? And down in Detroit a while back in the recorder's court. And here is the judge. And he says, "Yous guys," that's the way our judges talk, you see. "We're not going to let you muscle in on Detroit any longer. See, these are cabbies who drop fares inside the city of Detroit. Now, the boys in this city," that's the cabbies who are in the city, "have paid for protection." He doesn't use those words quite like that. He says they got a license, see. "And we're not going to let you guys come in here and muscle in on our business." That is, you're not going to have any competition and give the customer a break. "For all of you for the first offenders, we'll have a $200 automatic fine, $500 for the second offense, and $1,000 for the third offense." Dropping a fare inside the city of Detroit across the city lines. And they march them across. A whole room full. As they extract. His job is to enforce the monopoly control. Only government can do so. And if you can take this from the little local monopoly, you got to have influence downtown, to a statewide monopoly, you better have in Sacramento, to the national monopoly, therefore you got to have a federal government with enough power to restrict trade and commerce within the whole United States to be able to give you a special advantage in the market. And if you're going to be an international monopolist, you need the United Nations to control world markets. It's inefficient to try to control 120 governments. It's much better if you can put them all in one. You only have to buy less men that way. Notice the United Nations is not even democratic. Nobody's even elected. Now notice something. When we turn all the arms of the world over to the United Nations, it will be a peacekeeping organization. It will keep peace. Peace is in a slave labor camp. Peace is in prison. There will be peace. For as our government says, our policy is to turn over sufficient arms and ammunition to the United Nations so that no one dares resist. That's our foreign policy. Why, you see the guards there at San Quentin have sufficient guns so no one dares resist. That's peace, isn't it? And that's peaceful. The NKVD has enough guns and ammunition in Russia to make sure that no one dares resist. That creates peace, doesn't it? And you want to have a world peacekeeping force? Sure, all you need is a world Gestapo. And that's what the United Nations is. It's going to keep peace, for if you do not obey the edicts of that clique, And if they aren't able to control the total wealth and the total lives of everybody without objection, they are to have sufficient force to see that you become peaceful. And they intend to be a peacekeeping organization. They mean it. You just have to know what they mean by the word peace. They intend to have you obedient and peaceful. Or obedient or peaceful. It depends. They have a ways of accomplishing peace. Like kapow. Right? That's instant peace. In China they call it sail-made, the night of existence. They've already sail-made over 80 million human beings. In China, if you ever owned a half acre of land, the punishment is to have your arms and your hands and feet chopped off. If you live, you now must live on your hands and knees, or as a dog. You can't pick up food. You can't work. You must live on handouts like a dog and eat out of a plate off the ground. These are the kind of people we're dealing with. Capable of any torture and any evil. Some people don't believe that people can be totally depraved, but some get awful close. All you have to deny is all morality, and there you are. You're right. Anyway, monopoly, the means of production may be owned privately, but the prices are set by the producers, not the consumers. The consumers don't decide the prices. The producers do. And the only way the producers can decide the prices is by controlling the government of the market in which they want to have their monopoly in. They must have sufficient control. Therefore, a producer has to see that government has the power to expropriate from one citizen and give to another. That's not possible in a republic. So a monopolist must be committed to the destruction of the republic. In a republic, the government doesn't have the power to give the advantage of one producer over another. And if you want an advantage of one producer over another, you must destroy first the republic. You want to find out why they're pushing democracy? So that all you have to do is calm the mob and rob them. And notice it's the people who vote for it are the ones who get robbed. They're not considered very bright anyway. Let's take a look at fascism. Again, let's go to our definitions. We are told by just shouting at the word fascist, 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 that fascism is something kind of anti-communist is a fascist, isn't it? Isn't this what the inference, notice I said inference, given in our media, in our schools, is that a fascist is an anti-communist? They don't come out and really say this too much. It's all done by implication. As Lenin said, always attach unpopular names to your opposition. But more important was this. He said, always accuse your enemy of what you are. I'll repeat that. Always accuse your enemy of what you are. This confuses everybody. And most people just retire from the battle. And it gives them a clear, right, because nobody wants to be a fascist, and seeing they don't know which side is fascist, you just get out of the whole thing. Let's take some literal definitions. The word fascist means a bundle of sticks. That's what the word means, a bundle of sticks. Nothing more. That's a fascist. So an Italian word. Now you notice Benito Mussolini had as an emblem a bundle of sticks. The emperors of Rome had as an emblem the bundle of sticks. On the back of our Liberty Head dime, we had a bundle of sticks. And by the way, that's been changed to a torch of illumination, if you notice. But that's an inside one. Those of you who didn't catch that, you'll get it later. That's just a little advanced look. What do we mean by fascist? Remember the fable about the father who gave to the sons each a stick and they could break it easily, but he gave them the bundle and they couldn't break it. The idea that through unity there is strength. Have we heard that one before? Now notice, what did Benito Mussolini say? He says, I don't believe in a socialism. You see, the Catholic Church was against government ownership of property, and so he decided there were some Catholics in Italy. He'd skip this question. But he says, Italy is weak and Italy is poor. Italy is weak and poor because everybody's going their own way and we're not working together for the good of Italy. If Italy was strong and rich, Italians would be strong and rich. What is good for Italy is good for Italians. Now, I don't believe in the socialism. I don't believe the government should own a property. But some of you people don't produce the right of goods in the right of quantity, pay the right of wages, the right of prices. So I, Benito, will tell you what the prices and the wages will be and what you'll produce and how much. Outside of that, free enterprise. Now, once we had this free enterprise system, notice no means of production were owned by the state, but all was controlled by the state. Remember my automobile? Here we have the perfect example. What does fascism really mean? It means this, that the community is more important than the individual. That the good of the community, the good for society, the good of humanity is more important than the individual, the good of the state. And therefore, when there is conflict between the interest of the individual and the interest of society, the individual must yield for the good of society. That is the motto of fascism. What does the communists say? The group, the community, society comes ahead of the individual. The individual rights must be subservient for the good of the society, for the group, for the state. What communism is perfect fascism. Fascism carried to its ultimate form. So what do the communists shout at their opposition? Fascist, fascist. Why? They don't want you to understand they're the fascists. It is the most fascist system of all, and the best way to hide it is to accuse your enemies of being it, as Lenin said. What does the John Birch Society, for example, say? We don't want the power, nor anyone else to have the power. That the individual must be supreme. What did our Constitution say? Was it to protect society from the individual? That's what the communist state is for. That's what the fascist state is. Society, the state, must be protected from the individual. Our Constitution says we protect the life, liberty, and property of each single citizen. That the government is created for protecting the individual from the majority, from the mob, from the community, to protect his right to worship as he please, regardless of what others think. The right to live and to run and conduct his own life as he sees fit, and not comply to the will of the majority or to the mob. Freedom is the denial of the will of the mob, of the majority, or of society, and the government protects only one thing, the liberty of the single person. The single individual from society, and looks upon society as the enemy of individual liberty, and individual liberty as the goal to protect. And if every single citizen's life, liberty, and property is protected, we don't have to worry about society. You already have the best possible society. That is what the concept of the Constitution, but the monopolists don't like that concept. It doesn't make for fat profits. So this is what fascism is. Let's take a look at Nazism. National Socialist Deutsches Arbeiter Party. National Socialist German Workers' Party. Notice Lyndon Johnson said he was an American. He said he was for taking away from those who had too much and giving to those who had too little. He never took any of his own away, it seemed like. Anyway, he said he headed the Workers' Party. National Socialist American Arbeiter Party. And let's look at the program. But Adolf Hitler says, who are you trying to kid, Benito? What's all this white hat business? There's no reason I can't own a few businesses too. See, I'm going to control all wages, prices, what's produced and how much. What's the difference whether we have a privately owned Krupp I control or governmentally owned Volkswagen, which I own? What's all this? He had less Catholics, you see. And so we had basically the same society, except for the government ownership of some of the industry, direct ownership, which was not true in fascist Italy. Was Nazi Germany fascist? Certainly. The state came first, didn't it? The will of the group, the will of the majority. And notice, through unity there is strength. What was the motto of Adolf Hitler? Ein Reich, ein Volk, ein Führer. One nation, one people, one leader. I, Adolf. See? All for your own good, of course. I gave you law and order, didn't I? Gave you peace. Anyone who wasn't peaceful, my Gestapo made it very peaceful. Didn't you get lots of peace? Sure did. And we had, for those people who weren't peaceful enough, we had special peace camps. And we had peace ovens, which made for lots of peace. Oh, yes. And remember, everybody's for peace. You sure you get lots of it. Let's look at, by the way, let's look at our own government. The United States government directly owns outright over 700 private industries and businesses, making it the largest private cartel in the world. Ansco Film is a totally owned government company, for example. And holds... Ansco Film, yes. They, in the private sector, are the largest cartel in the world. We are following Adolf. You see, the only thing they haven't got yet